Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. In this episode, we're going to talk about 5 interesting tips for mixing. Now, some of these I may have talked about before, but a couple of them are a little fresh, so check it out. Okay, so number 1 is an interesting one. On your DAW, you can play things in half speed. So, for instance, in Pro Tools, which we're currently using, if I hit the Shift and the space bar, I can play in half speed. Here's the normal track at normal speed.
Let's roll with the party. We were somewhere else, we'd all be golden. Let's roll with the party.
And here, of course, is in half speed. So that's pretty darn useful for a number of things. You can actually record in half speed, meaning you can play a part and it can go up an octave. And not only will it go up an octave, it'll also be easier to play at the half speed. So I'm going to play a line, a fairly simple one. I've got the drums playing. Let's just turn up our gate. We've got the arc on here, so I'm going to bring up the gate a little bit. I've selected 2 IRs that are actually mine from my Marshall 160 and my Vox AC30. It's the PRS. I absolutely love this plugin. Okay, let's try it. Cool. Now let's duplicate that, but now we're going to do it going Shift, but adding Command with the space bar. Now it's going to record at half speed. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to listen to the 2 together in the track. So much fun. And look, if we hear them soloed, so you might say to yourself, well, Warren, that was a simple octave line. Yes, it was. But just imagine if you came up with this, complicated part, I don't know. Something like that. And you wanted that to be an octave higher. It's just going to save you so much time and work, and it's just a fun thing to do. If nothing else, if you've got a line that you want it to be an octave higher, and you haven't got the note there to go to, or even just the E, I could go. But do I want it bent? The point is like you can do all kinds of fun things just by doing that. So number 2, playing back at half speed. Why would that be useful? Well, have a listen to this. I'm going to play the first verse of this song at normal speed.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through. I can be your superhero, deflecting all the things that they may say to you. I can be.
Did you hear anything there? Let's hear it one more time. Now, a few years ago, I was in a mastering session, and we were listening to the track as it was being mastered, and we heard this high frequency. And what it turned out is that the console that the track was mixed on, there was a problem with the screen, and it was putting this like 12.5K ring like into it, but it was just buried in there, just like you just heard there. So if I play that back at half speed, have a listen. Warning, don't crank this. Okay? I'm warning you. Now it's like an absolutely wailing 6K kind of wow. One more time, half speed. Falls right into where my ears are really, really sensitive. Now what I did is I cheated. I did the same thing. I put a 12K test tone buried in the mix. It's at minus 11.9, like 12 dB down, like super, super buried in there. And now I'm playing it at half speed, so I'm getting like a 6K, which is like burningly loud. It's not any louder. It's just that it's now really predominant in the mix. It's a good trick. So if you got issues like with super high frequency stuff, even above 12K, like 15K, you know, a lot of adults can't hear much above 12, 13, 14, 15 in their teens and early 20s, let alone 18, 19, 20. So imagine like something really super high out there and your kids or your pet is like screaming because it's hearing 17K. You get my point. Play it at half and suddenly you're 10K and below and it's like, whoa, what is going on? So another really, really good reason why playing back and working in half speed is a really, really good tip and trick. Number 3, this one's actually a famous tip from Andy Wallace, which I read in like Mix magazine or Sound on Sound in like early mid 90s when I was first tinkering around. And that he uses a snare sample to trigger the reverb. He might actually not use the snare sample at all, but he uses it to trigger the reverb. Why would this be? It's purely and simply because if you've got hi-hat bleed or any other kind of bleed, the kick bleed, all of that kind of stuff coming into your live snare, it might make it more mushy when you want a really focused reverb. So if we go back to this song here for a second. So here's my drums without any kind of reverb on. Let's have a quick listen. I've got a sample as well, which is super aggressive. And the sample is the only thing going to the reverb. So what I could do is I could make this pre up here and now mute the sample. So we're going to hear the reverb of the sample. Just check this out. So it's a far more natural sounding snare drum now because we're keeping the snare top and snare bottom, and the sample itself is now just only triggering the reverb. Pretty tasty indeed. Let's have a listen to the snare top and snare bottom on its own. You hear a bit of bleed from the kick, hear a bit of bleed from the hi-hat. Now let's play the reverb back, which is just being triggered by the sample. Now you're going to hear snare top, snare bottom, and the reverb from the sample. Pretty tasty. All together, we've got
I can be a superhero.
great little trick. Thank you, Andy Wallace. I know lots of people do that these days, but Andy was the first guy I remember talking about it 20-something years ago. Thank you, Andy. Number 4, de-essing on things other than vocals. I have a de-esser going on these overheads. Why is that, you ask? Well, have a listen. Here's the overheads. They're pretty good, a little bright, but I've dialed out some low mids here. I've got rid of some of the low ends, so it allows the kick to breathe. If the toms are playing in the overheads, they won't sound like cardboard boxes. It's a really good idea to scoop out low mids of the overheads. Done a little bit of a boost here. Maybe we could bring that boost down a little bit. However, this is where the de-esser comes in. So I've got it about 5K, 5.2 here, where it's pretty painful, and have a listen. It's just taking that edge off. Now, this is really, really nice on overheads, could be on a hi-hat. Sometimes on acoustic guitars, you get like certain chords or strings that are ringing super high. If it's vibrating in the nut or on the bridge, you can get like these weird kind of bzzz kind of stuff like that. So the de-esser is a great tool for solving those kinds of issues. One of the great things is, of course, on this Waves de-esser here, for instance, I can go into sidechain mode and actually listen to what I'm removing. Meaning I can sweep this all over the place and find some offending frequencies. I find the default on this is a place I like because it is one of the most offensive frequencies around about that 5K area. But anywhere from 2 to 6K can be really painful, particularly that 3 to 5K area. All right, so number 5, using saturation for things other... Number 5, using saturation in less than obvious ways. This is a fun one. Jakir King does this as well. And I remember listening to his recordings from Blackbird when he worked with Kings of Leon and thinking that he had darkened up the rooms, having worked in the rooms, and wondered if he used saturation. And when I interviewed him, it was about a year ago now. Yeah, a year ago in Nashville. We'll be in July. I asked him if he did that, and he was like, yes, that's what I do, which I thought was fantastic. So let's talk about it a little bit. I've got the room high here from Sunset Sound. Let's listen to these, and you can see I've already done it, but let's have a listen. So here's the high rooms. Now, it sounds good. It's actually, the drummer's really, really balanced, so it's not too much of an issue, but the cymbals do tend to be a little tiny bit hotter than, say, maybe the snare. There's not much you can do about it. He's playing the snare pretty heavily, but he's hitting those cymbals super, super crunchy. So, Lo-Fi is one of my favorite tools. Lo-Fi comes free with Pro Tools. Now, I'm sure you have free saturation plugins, or you can get free saturation plugins. There's tons of them, but you have them with your DAW as well. The important thing is the saturation here. Have a listen. This is the saturation on now 0.5. One more time, listen to that cymbal. It's not affecting that kick and snare. Now put it in bypass, have a listen again. I could even loop that section and go in and out of bypass just for schnitz and schniggles. Let's just take that little piece. Here it is in bypass, just listen. Miraculous, isn't it? So what does that allow me to do? It means it's just affecting those high frequencies. The saturation is soaking it up. It's a beautiful thing. Meaning now what I can do is I can apply a bit of EQ. I actually cut some more low mids. And I can add some verb to it. And now my rooms become massive. So now I've got like a really great big room sound. It's fantastic. Loving it. Cymbals are perfectly controlled in the rooms now. Really great tip. And to be honest, it's something that happens quite a lot because young drummers as they're up and coming or inexperienced drummers will always overplay cymbals and never really dig into kicks and snares. So this is a wonderful technique. You can use it on overheads as well if they're just smashing the overheads so much that it's unbearably bright. But typically it's something I do primarily on room mics. I hope you enjoyed that. I like doing these 5-tip series. I'm sure there'll be another one next week. Thank you ever so much for checking it out. If you have tips and tricks that you'd like to share with us, please do. If you've done all of these, tell me how you do it. And hey, let's just share it amongst our community. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. I really appreciate it. See you all again very, very soon.